Good morning and good afternoon, all. This is Arturo Vargas, CEO of the Naleo Educational Fund. Thank you for joining us for this update webinar on Census 2020 State of Affairs. We are being joined by a large number of partners and Naleo members. So we'd like to give them another minute to log on. So we'll begin in about 2 minutes. Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon. This is Arturo Vargas, Chief Executive Officer of the Naleo Educational Fund. Thank you for joining us for this update on Census 2020 State of Affairs. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available off of our website at naleo.org and our census website at hagasecontar.org. You'll learn more about our census efforts from my colleague, Lizette Escobedo, our National Director of Census Programs. So today we'd like to provide an update on all the different moving parts with regard to Census 2020, in particular with a focus on the citizenship question proposal. We'll discuss congressional developments and what's happening on the policy end, developments in litigation, which are changing day by day, minute by minute, an update on census operations, and then an update on Hágase Contar, our national campaign to promote a full enumeration of all Latinos and opportunities for you to participate in this effort. As a reminder, Naleo Educational Fund's mission is to ensure a complete and accurate census as part of our overall mission of promoting full Latino political participation. We're a national partner of the Census Bureau. We do everything we can to make sure that Latinos participate in the census. We're a supporter of the Census Bureau. We support the Bureau's efforts in planning and preparation and execution of the census, and we want to make sure we support the professionals and the researchers, the scientists, the career staff at the Census Bureau. As I often tell them, we got your back in terms of making sure that they know that they have support in the field. However, we also are a watchdog organization on the census. We will hold the Census Bureau accountable for the work it needs to do to ensure a complete enumeration of all Latinos and all Americans. And also, we will fight back against any efforts to undermine the Census Bureau's efforts. So first, with congressional developments. The main issue that has developed in Congress has to do with appropriations and funding for the Census Bureau. The House of Representatives has already passed an appropriations bill for fiscal year 2020 that includes $8.5 billion to fund the Census Bureau. This includes other activities in addition to Census 2020. This was the amount that the advocates had requested and is above the amount that was requested by the administration. Very important, the legislation also has a limiting amendment that was sponsored by Chairman Jose Serrano, who is the chairman of the Subcommittee on Commerce, Justice, and Science of the House Appropriations Committee. This amendment that is part of the bill that was passed by the House will prohibit the use of any funding to support the inclusion of a question that was not included in the 2018 end-to-end test, which was supposed to have been the final test conducted by the Census Bureau before Census 2020. It has the effect of prohibiting the inclusion of a citizenship question, as well as any other question that was not asked in that test. So now this legislation has passed the House. Now we're waiting for action by the Senate. The Senate is expected to begin working on its appropriations bill in July, later this month. However, it's going to start from scratch. It's not going to start with the House-based bill. We anticipate that what the Senate ultimately passes will be something different from what the House passed, and so differences will likely have to be resolved in a conference committee. This would include funding levels as well as the limiting amendment, which I spoke about. And we intend to inform our partners and NALEO members about opportunities to engage with members of the Senate in this process. In terms of oversight of the Census Bureau, there will be 2 hearings that will be happening very soon, both on the Senate and House side. The Senate committee that has jurisdiction over the Census Bureau will hold a hearing on July 16th, and its counterpart committee in the House will hold one on July 24th. For both hearings, the sole witness will be Census Bureau Director Stephen Dillingham. Now, NALEO Educational Fund and other organizations I know do plan on submitting written testimony for the record in these hearings. And we'll make that testimony available to anybody who would like to either also submit their own testimony or read the issues that we raise with members of Congress. So that's what's happening in terms of the Hill. Turning now to the courts. Let me begin first by thanking the litigation teams and the very talented individuals and organizations that have been in various federal courts representing our communities and doing an outstanding job. Our appreciation to the New York Attorney General's Office, the ACLU, MALDEF, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, and the California Attorney General as well. So thank you to our litigation friends. Many of you do have questions with regard to the status of the litigation, and my effort here is to try to provide a summary of where things stand as of this minute, because changes are happening every day. And I will direct specific questions on litigation to one of the organizations that is engaging in the litigation. So where are we and how did we get here? So we know that there were 7 lawsuits filed challenging the citizenship question, 2 consolidated in New York, 2 in California, 2 in Maryland. All 3 reached decision. We know that there were all favorable decisions with regard to the judges saying there was a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. 2 judges found that there was a violation of the Constitution with regard to the enumeration clause. And there's activity happening in all of these courts now, and I'll talk about that in a second. We know that on June 27th, the Supreme Court issued its ruling. It was an expedited procedure that went directly from the New York District Court directly to the Supreme Court, bypassing the Court of Appeals. The Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, sent the case back down to the New York lower court for further consideration of the rationale to add a citizenship question. The California Appellate Court was also instructed the California judge to give further consideration in light of the court's ruling. So the court found that the addition of the question failed to satisfy Administrative Procedures Act procedural requirements because the Secretary did not articulate a satisfactory explanation for the decision to add the question. If you read the decision, it is very damning in terms of what Chief Justice Roberts considered to be the administration's rationale, more of a distraction, that it was contrived. In my view, it was the Chief Justice effort to say that, in essence, Secretary Ross lied to the court, lied to the Congress, lied to the public, and used this language in place of saying what we believe is actually exactly what happened. So the court remanded the case back the Supreme Court said that the lower court was correct in remanding the case back to the Department of Commerce, which is where we find ourselves now. It is important to note that the Supreme Court did not say that the addition of a citizenship question would violate the Constitution. It said there will be this would not be a violation of the enumeration clause. And it's also important to note that the court did say that there was evidence to support the Secretary's decision to add the question. However, his rationale was what the Supreme Court ultimately, the majority of the justices ultimately objected to. Where we are. So we know that the government argued vociferously in court that it needed a decision by June 30th so that printing could begin by July 1. It was a statement that it made over and over again in court. We know that as of July 3rd, this is now about 7 days ago, that statements from the Department of Commerce indicate that the printing of questionnaires without the citizenship question has begun. Now, we know President Trump has tweeted repeatedly about the census, including as recently as yesterday. And in one tweet, he indicated that reports that the Department of Commerce and Justice had conceded to the Supreme Court's decision and that the printing had begun was fake news. And this is what really now changed the course of developments. It was the president's intervention in the process that has upended the whole circumstances in which we find ourselves. There has been some suggestion that the census could be delayed. That is not allowable. The Constitution and federal law require a census to be conducted next year. The Constitution requires a census in the years ending in 0, and the Census Act requires a census with a census day of April 1. We know that any delay now in the printing of forms will simply make the work much more difficult for the Census Bureau and significantly increase costs. Now, the administration's position has forced the lawyers in the case to advise the judges that they are reviewing other options. It is important to note that some of these lawyers actually found out about the administration's position from the president's tweet itself. And if you read the proceedings of a hearing that was held in the Maryland lawsuit, it is clear that some of the lawyers there were learning about the president's and administration's position from Twitter at the same time that the rest of us were. The president has made a number of statements about the citizenship question. We know that has said that they're looking at all avenues to reinstate the question, including the possibility of an executive order, that they're waiting for a legal decision, and he suggested that there could be an addendum to the questionnaire. That would be a Herculean task for the Bureau to try to add a second form, in exponentially raising costs, something that would be extremely difficult, if not completely impossible to do. And the administration, the president has said that the reason it needs the citizenship data is for Congress for redistricting. And that is completely contrary to what we know that the government argued in federal court. Have also been positions and statements made by other actors in the administration, including the acting director of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, who said that citizenship data are needed to deal financially and legally with the burden of undocumented residents, even though the question that is being litigated does not ask about immigration status. It is only a citizenship question. Where we stand now in some of these, in these lawsuits in the different courts around the country, and some of these changes, this slide is already out of date based on what has occurred. We know that in New York, the plaintiffs filed a motion to prevent the administration from modifying the 2020 Decennial Census Questionnaire to include a citizenship question at any time after June 30th. That was the date by which the government argued they needed to have the final questionnaire done. There will be a hearing on this motion on July 23rd. We know that the government wanted to change out its attorneys and in the New York case, and the plaintiffs did challenge this. And we know that yesterday, Judge Jesse Furman in the New York case denied the request by the government to change its attorneys. In the Maryland case, the judge there held a hearing based on the president's tweet that it was fake news, that the Department of Commerce was proceeding with the printing of the questionnaires, that this was completely contrary to what was represented by the attorneys in court to him. As a result, in a subsequent hearing, the administration indicated that it would not stipulate, that it would not add a citizenship question, and that it would pursue options to add the question. As a result, the judge in that case permitted its case to go forward that was brought forth by the plaintiffs here by MALDEF and Asian Americans Advancing Justice that are based on claims of discrimination, that the motivation for adding the question actually was racially discriminatory against Latinos and other groups. As a result, now the judge has allowed additional discovery. That means there will be more depositions, there will be more review of documents looking into the motivation for why the administration chose to add this question. And there will be a hearing in this matter on September 3rd. In the New California case, there's a hearing scheduled for today. That is a status hearing that was just called yesterday. And we hope to hear later today the results of that hearing and how that affects that case. There was a 7th lawsuit filed in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. It was filed by a privacy group called EPIC. The suit claimed that the citizenship question would violate federal privacy safeguards. That suit, unfortunately, was dismissed. So where do we stand now in terms of operations? So that's a summary of the litigation. And again, I would direct specific questions about can the president do an executive order? Can he override the Supreme Court decision? And these other legal matters to the organizations leading the litigation. With regard to what's happening in the field right now, we know that the Bureau is about to engage in a process called in-field address canvassing. And this is a very, very critical element of the Census Bureau's work prior to 2020. For the past decade, the Bureau has been updating its master address file of every single address of every household in the United States that it used in 2010. It has been doing in-office updating. It has hired census staff to use Google Maps and other files and records in order to update the master address file. And for about 20% of the country now, the Census Bureau is going to send out enumerators to actually walk the streets of certain parts of the country to complete the updating of the master address file. This is a major departure from the 2010 process, where the Census Bureau sent enumerators out to walk 100% of the country to confirm all of the addresses. In this case, the in-field address canvassing is only doing about 20% of the country. The areas where the Census Bureau says that it needs the in-field work in order to ensure it has a complete and accurate address file. The reason this is so critical is that, remember, if you don't have a mailing address, you will not get any mail from the Census Bureau asking you to either return your paper census form or to go online and to complete your form or to call in into its phone banking operation to phone in your answers. It'll be extremely critical that this master address file is as complete as possible. The Bureau also now is continuing to open local area offices. There will be 248 such offices throughout the country. These will be mainly staging offices for census staff. Many of the staff now are being deployed using technology. And so the kind of infrastructure that the Bureau used in 2010 is not the one that it's using in 2020. And it is also conducting hiring. And this is where we believe we can really contribute to having the best effort go forward if we are able to encourage capable, committed individuals to a full count to apply for jobs at the Census Bureau. Remember that jobs can only be applied for online at census.gov/jobs. And so we ask everybody to encourage people we know in local communities to apply for jobs at the Census Bureau. In January of next year, the actual enumeration will begin in Alaska, in the remote areas, remote villages before the spring thaw. Most of us will begin getting mail from the Census Bureau on March 12th. It will go out in 4 waves of mailings. Ultimately, by March 19th, everybody will have received initial mailings from the Bureau. There will be a total of 5 mailings between March 12th and April 30th, reminding people, encouraging people to go online and fill out their forms. About 20% of addresses will get the paper form in the first mailing. Ultimately, everybody who does not respond will receive a paper form by the 4th mailing. The 5th mailing will be a reminder it's not too late to be counted mailing at the end of April. April 1st is Census Day. That only means that the data ultimately that are collected and reported will reflect what the population looked like in the United States on that day. So that's why we remind people, include all babies and children born on and before April 1st. Anybody born after April 1st will have to wait until 2030 to be counted. Non-response follow-up begins in early May. Non-response follow-up means that the Census Bureau will send out enumerators either first calling households or then knocking on doors to try to get information about that household. And it's only households that did not reply either online, by mail, or by phone. So if anybody does not want to get an enumerator visit, we have to encourage them to self-respond beginning March 12th through the end of April. That's the opportunity for people to respond in the different modes. It is not an online-only census. And it's the opportunity to be sure that you're counted and that nobody knocks on your door beginning in May. That operation then goes through the end of July. Then the Bureau has to start wrapping up this entire operation because it is required to report its findings, the final count to the White House on December 31st. Something else that is happening right now is that the Census Bureau is conducting one additional test that it did not plan for or budget. It's a test of forms with and without the citizenship question. Beginning in June, the Bureau began to mail out questionnaires to 480,000 households. Half of these questionnaires have the citizenship question and half do not. It is a questionnaire that will be used in 2020. The Bureau is mailing to all these households. It is not doing any non-response follow-up. It is not knocking on doors. It is not calling people to follow up. It is only waiting to see what the response rates are for the different types of questionnaires. And it will use that information then to inform how it needs to adjust its non-response follow-up procedures in March. So it's a very important test. It's results that we are eager to see and to understand how the Bureau will use that information to modify its non-response follow-up. We do get many questions about what we tell people about the citizenship question. We tell them we need to, one, understand exactly how the Bureau is going to engage in non-response follow-up for questionnaires that are left partially or completely blank, not returned at all, before we can accurately and fully tell people what will happen if they do not answer the citizenship question. We do know historically that a questionnaire where a single question was left blank did result in that household being counted anyway. We also always want to remind people about the confidentiality protections in the census data under Title 13, which continues to be the law of the land governing the collection of census data. Now I'd like to turn this over to my colleague, Lucero Escobedo, to talk a little bit about the efforts we're engaging to make sure everybody gets counted and your opportunity to participate. Lucero?
Awesome. Thank you, Arturo. And before I get started here, again, my name is Lucero Escobedo, and I'm the director of the National Census Program here at the NALO Educational Fund. I did want to address briefly that we had to switch over to another kind of webinar platform because initially we thought, hey, we're going to get a pretty good turnout because this is an issue that folks definitely care about, but we didn't realize the magnitude of turnout. So thank you for sticking with us. And at the same time, I'm very excited that we had this amount of people join because this is such a critical issue for our community. So a lot of folks may have seen us around in your community and even, on TV, et cetera, with this banner called Hágase Contar. Hágase Contar is the campaign by which we do all of our census work in the field. We are located in pretty much most of your hard to count communities. There you will see a cool picture of all of our field staff. Our field staff is growing. We have regional field staff in Texas, many parts of California, New York, Florida, North Carolina, Arizona, and we continue to grow and provide support in areas where we may not have a field team. Some of the campaign components include train the trainer curriculum and training opportunities. So we are actively working on our curriculum as we speak. We did develop curriculum for our hotline operators, which I will go into in a bit. And so we want to use a lot of that content to make sure that you can go out and inform your community and do the outreach work that you all need to do. What we are actively doing now in various communities is a State of the Census 2020 briefing. So we've been doing a presentation called Democracy at Risk all throughout the country, where we've pretty much been informing folks what are the things that may thwart a full count amongst Latino communities and what can we do to help. We hope to continue to take these presentations out into the community and continue to update those. We have tons of campaign material and promotional information. So I know when we initially developed a lot of our rally signs or t-shirts or buttons, a lot of folks thought, hey, isn't it a little too early? And we thought, it's really important to at least start the conversation now. We know that we have many challenges ahead of us, so making sure that folks are continuously exposed to what is the census, when is it coming, and that they're exposed to this information by trusted sources is absolutely critical. We have digital and traditional media efforts. A lot of you may have seen our digital and communications toolkits that we've been sending around. We hope to continue to send these out for folks to engage. Our national bilingual hotline, I will go over in just a minute. And then we have our informational website that Arturo mentioned previously, which is hagasecontar.org. When you go into that website, you look at your menu bar and there is a cool link called resources. If you click on there, everything that we're going to be actively developing or have already, you will find in that particular section. So we hope that all of you are partner in this effort, either regionally, statewide, or nationally. A sub-campaign and a very important piece of our work is our Hazme Contar campaign. This is a sub-campaign focused on achieving a full count of very young Latino children. We know that Latino children in general are usually undercounted or left off the census. In 2010, we had an undercount of 400,000 Latino children. We want to make sure and address that and avoid that for 2020. And so our campaign specifically, and has been actively working actually specifically with educators, administrators, school board members, and pretty much any local stakeholder that works closely with young children. The Hazme Contar campaign will feature a number of resources, including a comprehensive toolkit, sample curriculum, which we're working on now, informational material, template presentations for educators and parents, template resolutions for school boards. Quick shout out to any of our school board members that have already passed resolutions in their area. It's very exciting to see. We encourage other school board members who haven't yet to do so as well. And we will be doing earned media opportunities and digital media efforts around key dates, which I will go over in just a second. But again, we hope to work with educators, administrators, or even parents, parent leaders, PTAs, to make sure that we inform them the importance of counting every single child at the census. Our hagasecontar.org website, I wanted to showcase in a specific slide because we actually put a lot of effort into making sure that this website was something that our partners can use, that our stakeholders can use, and that the community can use. Our website is a bilingual website. The very cool feature that you'll see on our website is one of the things we've realized through our research and through the various research that we've looked at is that Latinos consume most of their online content on their smartphone. And so we wanted to make sure that this website was, one, mobile friendly, and that really worked to connect all of the various resources that we have available. So when folks go onto our website, there's a really cool button that says 877 it's info. If folks can't find what they're looking for in our website, they can click from their phone that specific button, and it'll direct them or send them directly to our national hotline, where we can answer any other questions they may have that they may not have found on our website. There's a resources tool. We encourage folks to click on the Be Counted tool so that you can actually submit your contact information, and we can keep you informed, and we can work with you in your communities. And so we really did put a lot of effort into launching this very early on, because we wanted to make sure that we had a main source of information for our community. This particular webinar, along with some tools that we will be releasing following this webinar, will all be available in the /resources section of this website. Now, our 877 El Censo hotline, I'll share some brief background in that. We had planned to really fully launch and go live with our national hotline, which we did in 2010, and we were planning to do in 2020 at the beginning of next year. However, given all of the recent developments, a lot of confusion in the community, we knew that the summer tests were going to be out in the community in 480,000 households. We launched this hotline super early. So we trained our operators. Our operators are located in both East Coast and Pacific time. So we are able to open from 8:30 a.m. Eastern to 8:30 p.m. Eastern, which is a lot of hours, but I think that this is helpful for folks nationally. We're open Monday through Friday. Some of the things that our hotline operators are trained to answer is information about the summer 2019 test. Our folks have been fully trained to answer any questions folks may have on that. Census outreach events in your local community, or what organizations you can connect with to work more closely. How and where to apply for census jobs. Folks in our hotline can provide the link, can provide information on the hotline to call to get more information. Up-to-date information on census operations and citizenship question. A lot of the trainings that we do, and even this webinar, all of our hotline operators are part of, and we continuously update our operations and our hotline trainings. Flagging major issues and rapid response referrals. If we see that we're getting a high volume of calls in a specific area where we flag as an issue area or as a potential trend for any issues, this is something that we actively work with our hotline on and make sure that we can address those issues. So it also helps to survey what are the needs, what information do we need to get out there, and what are the things that we need to address with the Bureau. We will also provide information on self-response methods and non-response follow-up. I know that this is the first time that we will have a digital option for the census. However, that is not the only option. So our hotline operators can actually take folks through the various options and see what works best for them and answer any of their questions. They will also be able to answer any questions on non-response follow-up, which is going to be a very key time for our community, and basic information on the actual questionnaire and who should be included. So our hotline training is, I actually work directly with our hotline, with our national director for our hotline. And so this is the most up-to-date source and a trusted source of information for our community. Now, ways to get involved. There's tons of ways, and if it's not on here, we can come up with something. So ways to get involved. You can visit our hagasecontar.org/ page. There you'll be able to download a bilingual communications toolkit. that our wonderful communications team worked on and has digital assets and just has a lot of information on why the census matters and what type of programs the census data helps fund. We have our bilingual citizenship question toolkit, which will actually be sent to all of the participants on this webinar following the webinar. And we have template resolutions for school board, college trustee, city council, state, any level of office. We want to make sure that folks are actively involved in being census champions in their community. So we have that available. If folks want to get more information on our Hazme Contar campaign specifically, if you go to our hagasecontar.org website /Hazme Contar, you can actually download a fact sheet on why the undercount of young Latino children is important and where are the main geographies for the undercount. If you want to distribute jobs information, which Arturo mentioned, it's very, very important that who's being hired at the census and to enumerate our communities are trusted messengers and folks that we know. So we're really relying on our partners to get the information out. Once we send this recording, if you click on this URL where it says contact an Alao Educational Fund Regional Census Manager, you will get a directory of all of our regional census managers so that you can plug in and connect in a closer way, work in a closer way with all of the folks that we have in the field. You can join our campaign pledges a couple of ways and to receive information. You can text us at census to 97779 or censo to 97779. And folks who actually dialed in today, a lot of you we know came from our keyword opt-in. So we do keep folks informed and engaged at all times and with current information. We ask folks to promote our national bilingual hotline, again, 877 at Censo. If nothing else, we know the census is a complicated issue, at least right now. And if you think, hey, I don't feel like I can assist someone just yet, I don't feel like I can answer questions just yet, if nothing else, just make sure you have information or a big sign that we can get you that says 877 at Censo and refer everyone to us, and we'd be happy to answer folks' questions. I already mentioned our website. We have some web banners and web widgets that we'd be happy to share with folks to link up. We highly encourage everyone to participate in your local complete count committees. There's some at the city level, county level, state level. And work closely with the Census Partnership Specialist. I know Arturo talked a little bit about how we partner with the Census. It's really important that we do have someone from the Census Bureau as part of our local coalitions as we do this work. Forthcoming that we are actively working on is Train the Trainer curriculum and training opportunities. We are keeping all of our content and all of our materials up to date. But until we find what is the kind of final decision on the citizenship question, we'll be able to put out some curriculum so that you all can use and become, in essence, census champions in your community and train other folks to become leaders on the census as well. So some key peak date opportunities. We know that everyone has their workload, and we know that everyone works with different types of communities in different ways. So one of the things that we wanted to do as part of our campaign is really tap into everything that's going on this year and next year, and all of these potential messages to really incorporate census messaging into the work. So as folks see, from August to September, we want to focus on a couple of key peak dates. One of them is back to school. We want to work with anyone who works with children who's on the webinar so that we can get you information, handouts, and actual curriculum so that you can provide this to parents as kids are going back to school and are getting information. We want to make sure they're also getting census information. We've started working with some local health centers in LA County and California. And so we're hoping to develop some information and fact sheets around the National Health Center Week. We've been working with our union brothers and sisters, and so we hope to continue to do that and do work with all of you for a Blitz on Labor Day. September 17th is Citizenship Day. We actually do a lot of citizenship workshop as part of our other civic engagement work, but we hope to make sure that we have census information at all of your workshops as well. Hispanic Heritage Month, September through October 15th. Here is where we really want to make sure and drive the point home that if you have an undercount of the second largest population group in the country, you have an undercount of the country. And so we want to make sure that we're inserting these messages all throughout. I'll spare folks going into the full dates for 2020 because it's a lot of them, but this is where our thinking is at. We want to make sure that we're tapping into every single opportunity. You have a march, you have a parade, you have a community event. Please incorporate Census. We know that the most trusted, based on our research, the most trusted messengers in the community are all of you. And so if our community sees you all with the Census information and in these community events that they're used to going to, we know that it's highly likely that they'll participate because they know and they trust you more than anybody else. So here are all of our opportunities to partner. We hope to work with you all following this webinar to see how we can connect on these opportunities and provide you all the tools to incorporate Census into all of the work that you do. And with that, I will hand it back to Arturo.
Thank you, Lizette. One other activity we engaged in I wanted to remind everybody about is that our national leadership appointed a National Latino Commission on Census 2020. It was co-chaired by Luby Navarro, a member of the school board in Miami-Dade County, and by the California Secretary of State, Alex Padilla. It was a bipartisan commission, geographically representative. It held 5 hearings throughout the country, receiving testimony from local groups, elected officials, civil rights groups, and representatives from the African American community, Asian American community, LGBTQ community, and resulted in a final report with recommendations for the administration, for Congress, and for the Census Bureau. This report's available on our website and at this link if you would like to read about what the different community leaders around the country had to say about the challenges that they are encountering. This is new data about the challenges that we're all facing. There was considerable angst about the citizenship question raised, and this is information we will be sharing as part of our written testimony that we'll submit to the House and to the Senate later this month. So to summarize where we are in terms of the citizenship question, litigation, and policy, the House of Representatives has passed legislation that will prohibit the use of any funding to have a question on the 2020 census that was not used in the end-to-end test in 2018. So that means no citizenship question can be included. Now we have to wait to see what the US Senate does in its appropriations bill and what Congress ultimately ends up passing in terms of its funding direction to the Bureau. There'll be 2 hearings, July 16th and the 24th, which we will be monitoring very closely. As far as the judicial process, we do need to wait and see how this will all work itself out and come to its complete course. It is a very fluid decision with developments happening day to day, but we know this much. Number 1, there are still injunctions in place by 3 federal district courts that are preventing the Census Bureau from including a citizenship question. Number 2, we know that the Supreme Court has ruled that a question could not be included unless a better rationale is provided. And so we're waiting to see what the administration's next step will be. And number 3, we know that the Census Bureau has begun printing census forms without the citizenship question. So that's where we are as of today, July 10th, 2019. Stay tuned, and we look forward to working with all of you in ensuring a full and complete count of all Americans, everybody in our community, and that we uphold the foundations and principles of our Constitution and our democracy. Thank you for joining us today.